this episode, we're talking to Rosca, who we'd met at HMP Grendon in his therapy, and he'll introduce himself and talked about his experiences in other prisons and in Grendon as well.
Very grateful for his honesty and his openness about, the challenges he faced growing up and his pathway to offending. And I think just, I suppose navigating the difficulties of life after release, I think was really powerful for me actually. And, something I kind of have to continue reminding myself as, a clinician who's still, offering therapy to people and, also doing assessments as well for people for parole. So I think that was one of the things that really stood out to me.
Interesting to hear it from his perspective, somebody who's been through what can be a really daunting process in therapy, and his experiences since he left prison as well. And even though I've heard his story lots of times, it was very powerful to hear it again, and from where he is now rather than where he was back then, telling us that story. So, can we start by welcoming you, Rosca, to the episode? We'll really be looking forward to speaking to you. And I wondered if you could tell us a bit about your life and how we all got to know you.
Thank you for having me, guys. Um, my name's Rosca, and I was a resident at Grendon, HMP Grendon, and I worked closely with yourself and Kate. And Kate was you was both a great help to me in understanding, and you're still a massive help to me in understanding how therapy works. And there was times where I didn't want to do it. There was times where I wanted to quit. There was times where my head went a little bit, but I stuck with it, and I graduated. And yeah, that's how I met the both of you through HMP Grendon.
And so, do you mind sort of telling us a bit about your journey, how you got to Grendon?
So I was sentenced for a possession of firearm, and I got IPP sentence, and I I done several other different jails prior to me coming to Grendon, like loads of different jail, and my probation thought that it would be great for me to come to Grendon in order to address um some of my traumas and my offending pattern and why it was that I was doing certain things, and I needed to understand that. So, um, and also I needed to address all that childhood trauma that I went through as a young child, and even later on in my adult years, from like 11 till the time where I got sent, at the time where I came into prison when I was 17.
I was just wondering, Roscoe. I mean, I was anytime I hear your story, I always find it really powerful, hearing about it. But I guess as you were speaking, I was just reflecting on what it was like for you as a young male to be sentenced with an IPP sentence. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about what that experience was like for you?
Uh, for me, that experience was extremely traumatic because I didn't even know what IPP sentence was when I first got given that sentence. All I knew was just that I had to do 4 years, and then when it comes to my 4 years, then I can apply for parole. So I never even understood what it was until my last probation officer, he sat me down and explained it to me and told me everything I need to know about IPP and what it was. But um, coming in at the age of 17 and them waiting till you turn 18 to sentence you and give you an IPP sentence, um, I shouldn't have committed the offense, but that offense as a 17-year-old, you usually get 3 years for it. But because of what was going on at the time with like gangs and everything, and it was making examples, I fell under that category of someone that was made an example out of. So for me, I remember when I first got sentenced, I just cried because I didn't really know what was going on and how long I was going to be in jail for. There was mixed messages from, the probation who sits with you in court, my barrister at the time, um, didn't really know how the IPP worked and all of that stuff. So I just remember crying my eyes out, thinking, what have I done? And you know, here I go, and I just wasted my life. And I remember I just had my son as well, so it was extremely, extremely traumatic for me hearing that indefinite for public protection. So yeah, when you hear that indefinite, you don't know when you're coming home, Kate. So it was extremely challenging and traumatic.
As we know, that sentence is now no longer given out, but there's obviously still a lot of people still subject to it, both in prison and outside of prison, still serving that indeterminate sentence. And how we could celebrate that you came off yours, you finished your
Yeah,
sentence earlier this year, so that was a great celebration for you that you're no longer subject to that.
yeah, it was amazing, but I still feel for those who are still,
Mm.
in
Mm.
prison on IPP because they've acknowledged that it was such a inhumane sentence to give to people, and it was mainly designed for prolific offenders and sexual offenders and all these other like murderers and like people that had like 2 strikes or 3 strikes and stuff, but they just started giving it out to everyone. And there's a story that always pops into my head whenever I speak about IPP. There's this guy in prison who attempted to steal a pack of cigarettes, and he's still in jail 16 years later, and his mental health is literally through the roof. And because he never knew when he was coming home, he started misbehaving and doing dirty protest and all of this stuff, because every time he went up for parole, they would knock him back and say he needs to do this, he needs to do that, his mental health is not good or that. But for me, I feel for that person, because for someone to be in prison 16 years later for attempting to steal a pack of cigarettes, it's seriously harsh.
Mm.
And don't know how factual the story is, but um, that's something that sticks with me. And also, I've seen other people that got 2 years IPP, been in prison for 10 years, and you're just looking at them thinking, but you was meant to go home after you do your, sorry, that's just a vending machine. I had to come and use somewhere to do this podcast. Um, so for me, like, all these people that have had 1 year, 2 year IPP, 3 year IPP, and they're still in jail like 10, 12 years later, I don't understand it. And I feel for them. And I'm grateful, and I was very lucky to be one of the people that escaped that nest and being in that system of being in an IPP prisoner. So if I didn't come to Grendon, if I didn't have yours, Kate, my head therapist, um, and all these people and my peers in Grendon, or just prior to me coming to Grendon, then I wouldn't have escaped that net. I think I would still be in prison, such an angry young man, and doing stupid stuff and lashing out and not understanding why I'm lashing out on those things. So I'm extremely grateful that I managed to, escape that nest. But like you said, Geraldine, they've abolished it, but I don't understand why there's so many people still in prison on IPP sentence when they
Mm.
should be home, to their families. I understand that they've all committed a crime, and some of them have done horrible things. I done my crime, was horrible as well, and I shouldn't have been carrying a firearm in a car, But yeah, I just feel for them people, man. It's horrible. Like they don't know when they're coming home and they're still in prison.
Would you mind telling us a bit about, going back a bit, how you got into that position? Because you talked about being in a gang. Maybe you could tell us a little bit of how you got to be in a gang.
When I first came over to the UK as a refugee, because I came over from refugee camp from the age of 5. I went into a refugee camp due to war and stuff happening in Congo, and my dad was arrested, and my sister, my mom, and then my brother and my sister got put incarcerated with my parents because they went to look for them at a police station. And I went into camps, and then when I came over here, when the Red Cross found us in a camp in Benin after 3 years of being away from our parents, um, we got reunited with them because they fled and escaped prison and came over to the UK, and some of their friends went to France. Um, Settling here was really tough for me. Like, I couldn't speak a word of English. I got severely bullied in school. Um, I now understand why that was, and I don't blame, I don't hold any bad feelings towards them kids. I believe that children are just children, and when you don't understand something, you make fun of it, but it was at my expense and stuff like that. So I fell into the wrong hands at a very young age because I got taken out of school from in year 6, and the head teacher at the time thought that it would be wise for me to come out of school for a month or two whilst they addressed the other children that was bullying me, because if they removed all three of them, their parents would have kicked off, when it should have always been that way around. So in that time, when I never had nothing to do, I just used to go outside and play football and kick a ball at the wall. And my mum used to work a 3 jobs. My dad was working 2 at a time, and there was this group of children in the area took a liking to me and started teaching me English and doing this and doing that. And for me, it felt like I found that sense of belonging. And then by the time I was, going into secondary school, I latched onto it, and, you know, they'll give me little bags of this and that to sell. And it started from when I started hanging around with them. And at the beginning, I didn't know where it was, but like I always say to everyone, when I did know where it was, I fell in love with it and I latched onto it because they gave me a sense of belonging that I didn't have, and I was yearning for, and I still couldn't speak a word of English. And they was coming to school and picking me up and making sure no one bullied me in secondary school and stuff like that. So that's how I fell into the gang culture, and I fell into the gang culture even more deeply through the stuff that was going on for me at home that I didn't speak about to anyone, um like I'm finally at that, like I wrote a song the other day, and I think I sent it to you, Jordan, and I'm finally at that place where I'm being so vulnerable with music, and it's taking me a long time, but in that song I address for the first time in my life how much of the situation at home was bad for me, to the point where I left home when I was 11, and I've never really had a home since. Even in my adult years now, I'm still, doing what I'm doing and surf surfing and all of that stuff. Like, I've never really had a home from the age of 11, because I left home. I used to climb out the window late at night and go and sleep under a bridge because yeah, my father was abusive. He couldn't deal with all that trauma that he went through. So even if I was 2 minutes late or something happened in school that wasn't my fault, I will get blamed for it and I'll get severely punished for it. And to the point where the punishment became really bad and I just couldn't take it. So at night time, I'm going through all these PTSDs of the stuff that I witnessed in the war and the stuff that I'm having to deal with. And on top of that, I'm going through some more trauma at home when it should have been a safe place for me. So all I could do is just run outside and latch on to anything else that I could and try to take myself away from all of them stuff as much as I could. So then I went into care from the age of like 12, yeah, 12 to 12, 12, 12 or 13. I ran away from care because that was a horrible experience. Then people was also just crazy. Um, And I went back out on the streets and I was just sofa surfing and latching on to these older kids trying to make money to survive and buy food and do this and do that. And they kind of knew that, so they took full advantage of that. And um, so yeah, that's how I kind of fell into the whole, being outside and being involved in illegal activities and being involved in the gang. And I didn't even know some of these kids had problems with this area and that area. Like I said, I couldn't really speak English properly till later on. By the time I find out, it was too late because I'm friends with these lots. So whatever trouble they get into, I have to stand by them. And these people are feeding me at the time and letting me sleep in their rooms if they can and stuff like that. Or and when I wasn't doing that, I'm walking around the night time finding blocks that's open and going in there, sleeping in there, and ringing one of my mates in the morning and or knocking on their doors and trying to get a shower, or trying to when their mum go to work and they're bunking off school and we're going back to theirs and I'm having a shower and freshening up and stuff. So yeah, it's just yeah.
It's hard to imagine a child in that position, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it is really powerful hearing you share some of that, Rosca. I think we really appreciate your honesty around that. I'm sure it's very difficult to have to think back on some of those experiences as well, although I know you also live with them every day. I was just really thinking about, as you were talking, you know, would anything about that time made a difference to you in terms of veering you off in a different path? Because I guess what I heard you say was actually there wasn't very much stability at home potentially, and I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah.
but so correct me if I'm wrong, but there wasn't much stability at home, but actually what those people offered you was a sense of stability, even if it was through offending to some extent. That was the
Yeah.
consequence of that, or the payback. But would anything at that time have made a difference for you to taking a different path? What would you have needed at that time?
I truly like I've had a lot of time to think about this, okay, and I truly believe if there was some more stability at home and my dad heard us out instead of, you know, doing whatever he done to us and gave us that sense of, even in primary school, I couldn't speak to him about anything because he would just lash out and do whatever he's doing. And then mum will have to step in. And if mum steps in, then she's in trouble for it and they're fighting and arguing. And like we lived in a two-bedroom flat, like they had with seven of us. So we're just all over the gaff, like sleeping on top of each other. It was just so chaotic, like coming from Congo to here and just being going into primary school and facing that and then at home and all of that stuff. Then we moved to a four bedroom, was it four bedroom with, and I had this tiny little box room, and it was my own for the first time, which was really cool. But and my sisters all shared. But for me, like even that house was just so chaotic, and my dad would just like literally, I don't know what was wrong with him at the time, and I still don't understand him to this day. But I don't know, Kate. I don't know how to explain it. But if for me, if there was more stability, then I believe that I would have been much more safer and not tended to be out there and look for that elsewhere, especially at school as well. If the teachers would have addressed like, them boys and dealt with them, then I would have been there at school and I wouldn't have been outside and hanging out with those kids when I was left, when they removed me for a while. And if my dad listened to us lot and didn't do what he done, then I wouldn't have had to climb out the window and go to my mates, then beg them to stay there and or sleep, find cars that's open, sleep in cars or sleep under a bridge and find blocks that's open, sleep in them and just run away from home because I don't want to go through all of that stuff that's happening at home. I don't want to hear my sisters crying. I don't want to hear my mum crying. It just takes me back to being in the war and you're just hearing all these screams and cries and everything else. So I believe if I had more stability as a child, which every single child should have, I would have been much. I believe that my path would have been different to what it then went on to be. Um, Yeah, I don't know. But
I know that's a really difficult question, isn't it, in some ways, because you kind of there's almost like a butterfly effect. If you change one thing, then there's almost like a domino effect in other things, get kind of the impact of that.
yeah,
And maybe it isn't just one thing. It almost sounds like it needed a few pieces of the puzzle to be able to kind of divert that given the amount that you were facing. There was, not only being a refugee, but also, not speaking English, trying to you both, your parents and all of your family trying to, come to terms with that as well as being in a new country and then, the difficulties in school. I just wanted to jump forward a little bit. Just thinking about when you came to prison, I was just really curious. You started speaking about how therapy was really powerful for you and really
yeah.
helpful. At what point in your sentence, did you realize that something needed to change?
I believe when I got shipped out of HMP ISIS and moved to Belmarsh, and um, I left all that chaos in HMP ISIS. I moved over to Belmarsh and safe and custody officer, and she sat me down and kind of because she kind of knew of me and she grew up in the era that I grew up in. So she just sat me down and said, "Listen, like this is not you. Like I don't believe this is you. And when you speak to everyone else, you're very well mannered. But when someone comes at you, and every single time that you've come out your cell, and when you first come to ISIS, people will attack you because you're coming out of your cell, and then you're having to defend yourself and fight back. I don't believe this is you, and that's always been my thing throughout my life. I've always tried to defend myself, but I just take it. I've kind of taken it too far at times, which is just, I think I didn't understand that till I'd done therapy and addressed why certain things happen. But when I moved to Belmarsh, she really sat me down and she brought in, and prior to her bringing in, I had this probation officer that didn't really care. They didn't really know what to do with IPPs or where to send them. But because all my stuff's always been well documented, she came in and she said, look, I've had a few people, like yourself that's gone through terrific things when they was younger. And then I sat down and we think that therapy will benefit you massively. And you've got a son, Rosca. You can have a life after this. This is not the end for you. So if you want to get out and you want to move away from all of this stuff, you need to make a choice. And they gave me a little while to think about it. And in Belmarsh, I was very well behaved. I was one of the most behaved prisoners in Belmarsh. So I already started making that shift when I go to Belmarsh because I realized that I don't want to be around all these people in jail or parts of gangs and all of that stuff. I want to go home to my son and my family and my mum. So I already started making a shift and I was like, what is Grendon about? And I was asking people and I was like, oh, Grendon's a crazy place, mate. You don't want to go there. Da 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 da. And you hear all these stories, and it was so frightening for me to make that decision. But I made that decision because I needed to, and I needed to do that. I didn't come out of prison, then I wouldn't have been able to be there and spend all that time with my mum just before she departed. So I'm extremely like grateful that that light bulb moment came for me at that time to make that transition and just stay away from people and bad company in prison and actually look at my own future and what do I want for my life? Do I want to be here with these lot trying to impress them like you've been doing most of your life trying to impress people to fit in, or do you want to be on your own journey and for once in your life stand on your own too and be like, this is me, this is the path that I've always wanted to do, and I want to do this. So I chose to do that, and I came to Grendon.
And how did you experience it, knowing that you'd heard it was going to be such a crazy place? How was it for you?
I remember sitting in my first group and in an induction and listening to people speak. And I was just like, where the hell have I landed myself? You hear crazy stuff. And, there's times where I heard certain things and I was just like, it's getting you angry and you're thinking, why can you do that? But then you have to then quickly snap out of that and be like, wait a minute, why are you judging him when you, you're, yes, you might not have committed what he's done, but a possession of firearm, whether you didn't know what you was doing at the time and you didn't know what was in the bag and you was delivering it to earn money, it's still a crime. So you've got no right to judge that person. He's here trying to get help. You're here trying to get help. So you have to kind of quickly in your head get past that, but it doesn't make it easy because it's a continuing thing. Like when you hear certain stories in there, what people are in there for, like it can actually give you a little bit more PTSD in your head on top of the therapy and the PTSD that you're trying to come out of, like just hearing it nonstop. So it was really hard for me, but then I find my little group of peers, which kind of helped. So for me, it was an induction together. That's where we started the journey. So me and him used to talk to each other and bounce off each other. So if one person's down, I'll pick him up. If I was down, he'll pick me up. And then eventually came and it was much easier. And then we done the learning together thing, and then everyone else, it got so much easier to go through that process. Learning together was a program that they started doing at Grendon, which they brought a bunch of students from Cambridge to come and study alongside people at Grendon, and I kind of think they done that because Grendon is the safest jail I think in the country. I think to a degree. So I I got recommended to get onto the course by because he done the course the previous year and he was like, trust me, little bro, man, do this. It's gonna benefit you. I swear to you. I was
I
like,
can hear him say that actually.
literally, and I was like, what am I gonna bring to these students that all go to Cambridge? I've never even been to school or college or uni or anything. Was like, trust me, little bro, you've got so much experience. You just bring yourself. I'll be there. I'll hold your hand through it. So I put my name down and I was picked for it, which was great. And then, so I met first 3 sessions. I was so quiet. I didn't want to speak. I just used to look at everyone and just think, what am I doing it? Then kind of picked up from that and they started bringing me in slowly and they brought in guest speakers, judges, barristers, all sorts of different people in different professions, you know, and they'll come in and talk and stuff like that. And yeah, learning together was a massive boost, I think, in Grendon. And I think after a while, we really looked forward to it. It brought something different into the establishment. It made us feel, it put us on the same equal spectrum as, all them Cambridge students from our side. The only difference was that we was inside and it was outside. But it brought us all together and none of them judged us then. They all treated us with care and compassion and taught us whenever we struggled with things, they would teach us. And also they was learning themselves, So we all learned of each other and it was great. So
and you also did the Changing the Game program for people who'd been in gangs to sort of learn a bit more about yourself from that perspective. How did you find that?
That was amazing because they also broke down. I think the way Paul understands the gang culture is I think because he's from so Paul could have been part of it, but he chose a different direction, if you get what I mean. And he spent a lot of time watching his friends go in prison, or some of them are no longer here and stuff like that. So Paul was the perfect person to study everything around gang and start that course. And he also brought Dr. Corinne, who also, she's super intelligent and she understands it and she breaks it down even more beautifully. So changing the game was also a massive program, and I believe that changing the game should actually come back to Belmont. I mean, to Grendon, because it's going to benefit so many other men like myself that was part of a gang, and also educate people that don't know about gangs properly and stuff like that, you know. So yeah, changing the game was extremely helpful, and yeah, and Paul DVDs and stuff and made us watch different stuff, and Dr. Corinne broke everything down perfectly to us. So yeah, changing the game was amazing. I didn't find it as challenging as it was to do learning together, to be honest, because learning together was more like, you know, you've got to do work, you've got to write, you've got to take it back to yourself and study things. Changing the game is Paul coming in and why did you do this? Okay, do you understand that you done this and that because of your broken homes and this and that and that? And Dr. Kareem will also break it down more. For me, changing the game was amazing, but it wasn't as challenging as learning together, to be fair.
I'm not sure if all of our listeners might be aware, but Grendon is group therapy.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about you were saying obviously being in the group psychotherapy, then doing these other kind of group interventions with learning together and changing the game. Rosca, do you think if you had just done one-to-one therapy that it would have been as beneficial to you? Or I mean, I know it's hard to say when you haven't done that path, but I was just curious what your view would be on that.
That's a tough one, Kate. That is a tough one because if I could have done one-to-one therapy and avoided some of the discussions and hearing other people's things, then yes, I think I would have chosen that. But thinking about it you know, in looking at a bigger picture from a helicopter view, I don't think that would have been, I don't think that therapy would have had the impact that it has on me now, if you get what I mean, because actually being in a group and challenging each other, okay, why did you do that? No, actually, you done that because of this. And as men, you're doing therapy together. I think that is one of the most powerful things I've ever done in my life, group therapy. To be in a room full of grown men, seeing them cry, seeing them saying how much they miss their family, they miss this, and they remove and they regret what they've done, and you know, and they're showing real remorse, you know, and you can tell when people are fake, you know, people are lying, you know. But in my sessions, most people were actually genuine sorry for what they've done, and they just wanted to make it right and go home, and you learn from each other. So one-on-one therapy, I think, benefits you after Grendon, like I do now, where I have one-on-one therapy session, because it's a continuing thing. I still do therapy now, but I believe in that setting where it's in Grendon, group therapy is the best thing to do in Grendon, you know, because then you're getting challenged and you're hearing about other things, and it's also making you think. It's making you understand why certain people have done what they've done. Then you start looking at your own behaviors, and then you link everything up, and then you start understanding things even much better than you did, you know. So I feel like one-on-one therapy is cool, but it wouldn't work in Grendon, and it wouldn't have the impact that it has on the residents.
So this podcast and YouTube channel, we talk about forensic psychology and psychologists, and I wonder what your experience has been, and you can be open, tell us what your experience has been, because we'd be really interested from your perspective as to what your experience has been of forensic psychologists through your time in prison and outside of prison. I guess you've probably had less contact with them, but
I think I never wanted to speak to you guys because I was scared. I was so scared. I'm like, if I say anything, you're going to use that against me, and then you're going to get into my brain and try to manipulate it for you know, for this is how I first saw it. And I'm just being honest. You would have tried to manipulate it to keep me in Grendon and do the work, because I didn't think I needed that much work. But actually, when you sit down and you actually listen and you get rid of all them fears, obviously they don't go away straight away, but it's kind of like you have to get rid of all that fear of, if I don't do this and I'm not going on. Actually, no. Stop thinking, if I don't do this and I'm not going on, and this, you know, forensic psychologists are going to use this and use it on your parole and say and use it to twist things around. And the fear that most people do have, and actually just look at it as like this. What work do you need to do? You know, what work do you actually need to do? Why are you here? Why did you come in the first place? Like, what made you come in? So for me, then I found that easy in speaking to forensic psychologists such as yourself, Geraldine, or anyone else, because I then put my trust in you guys to believe that, you know, all the challenges and the questions and everything that you're asking is for my greater good, and it's not for anything else than for me to get to a point where, you know, I can actually be, I wouldn't say, actually it's the truth, yeah, not a normal, I wouldn't say a normal person, but I think that would be an insult to people, because I think everyone's normal, but they just make stupid mistakes and stupid things, you know, and do stupidness. But I feel like me putting my faith in you guys and trusting the process then gets me back to the person who I always wanted to be and the person I was always meant to be, you know, and you help me refine my path to that, you know. So if I didn't put my trust in, you know, in the therapy, forensic therapist or the head therapist or the group therapy, then I wouldn't be this person I am now and refound myself and what I've always wanted to do, and, you know, and be at this place that I can talk about things so easily, you know. So I think it's about it's about you just trusting the process. And they always used to say that to us, just trust the process, trust the process. And for us, we're like, what do you mean? What process do we have to trust? I don't want to trust no process.
Because we will have a lot of trainee psychologists and qualified, you know, psychologists as well listening. What could we do better, Roscoe?
I think that you guys smile more, just smile, just smile. It makes it much easier, you know, and you know, and it's you're doing a serious job and you're there to help shape these men's futures, right? But having a smile and just it just breaks down so much barriers. And of course, you know, I understand that through the prison system, staff are told that you can't do this, you can't have this, can't, you know, you've got to be very serious at all time and all of this stuff. But some of the men have not, you know, they've been going through so much stuff and, you know, going through all these challenges in prison. Just having someone smile at you every now and then makes such a difference. And not to be serious all the time, you know, you're allowed to have a little joke with the men. I think it breaks down barriers, you know, because then to them it shows them that you're actually just a human being and you're not there to just be like, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, you need to look at this, you need to look at that, you know. So it's about having a smile. And for me, I found like later on, you know, you smile on the wing and we'll, you know, we might have a joke, or I'll see Geraldine and Geraldine will smile and this other person. So it became more easier for me. But for the new trainees or people that are thinking of joining this profession and helping men such as like myself and so much others, you need you need the therapy and everything that you guys do. I feel like it's just, don't treat them, you know, don't treat them as just this thing that just needs therapy. Actually, you know, try to tap into them a little bit more, you know, and just I don't know how to put it, but
No, you're describing it well. I
yeah,
was really moved by what you said earlier on about the officer. You know, they obviously saw something in you that made them think, oh, he wants to change, and they could see what you could see in yourself that had
yeah,
been sort of hidden under all those layers. So there was definitely something you were showing them that made them think, oh, we need to just get him, just tip him onto the right path, and then off he'll go, which you did, because you do all the work, don't you? Once you get there, it's you facing all these things you have to talk about.
yeah,
And obviously, that was evident to them that they thought this is the right place for him to go to.
yeah. And it's just about someone believing in you as well, you know.
Mm.
And I think if we got like, they believed in me and they saw something in me and
Mm.
switched that button on,
Mm.
which made me even believe in myself more. So
Mm.
for future trainees or people that are training and watching this, I know it's hard to you know, be a therapist because you're taking on too much and stuff. But and you have to process it. And I'm not sure if you guys get therapy for everything that you hear. But I think you all need therapy, because it's such a tough job, man. But I feel like just, try and switch on their light, basically, like other people have done for myself, and which I've now, you know, just carried on with it and just be like, what, this is me. I don't care what comes in my direction. I'm gonna stay on my path and do what I'm doing. And it's actually, it's worked out well. It's working out amazing, and things are happening, minus the other things that are still, hanging over, the little things that go on, the little stress. But apart from that, when I look at my life now, my life is completely changed and completely different. That's because I've had people such as yourself, Kay, and everyone else believe in me. Even when I got my knockback, I remember I was so pissed off on everyone at the wing, everyone. The head therapist, I was pissed off at Kate, I was pissed off at everyone, but it was none of their fault. It wasn't their fault. It was actually the best decision at the time for me to, and it was none of them had anything to do with, the decision. But when something like that happens, you as humans, we look for things to blame naturally, and you're like, actually, it's it's their fault. They should have written this or they should have done that. But actually, they did. They backed me to the best of their ability. At the time, I was angry at her and I didn't understand it, but I kind of understand it even better now. After going through that process of getting knocked back, going to Brixton, and actually challenging myself back into a normal prison to see if I've actually learned a lot from being in Grendon and implementing them tools when you're getting people trying to draw you in and saying, oh, here's a phone or here's a bit of weed and go and sell it and do this, and you're like, no, actually, no, I'm not doing this because I've worked so hard on myself and I've dealt with all of that stuff and I've locked it away that I don't ever want to deal with it again. And I want to be strong and go on my journey and carry on doing what I'm doing. So yeah, if that answers your question.
And you're a very talented musician.
No.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you got into that and yeah?
I'll go into that really treat from Grendon, to be fair. That's when everything kind of like really started connecting. I used to make music prior to me coming into prison, but it was stupid. I wouldn't say it was stupid music. It was part of me finding myself. And even when I was in the camp, I used to do things. And I've always had music in my blood. We used to put on like shows when we was in Congo because, I lived a good life when I was in Congo and my mum would get us to like put on a show for my family and stuff, and we'll be dancing, I'll be singing with my sisters and stuff. So when I came to Grendon, everyone was into music, and we decided to ask Governor for the first time ever in Grendon to get a studio, and we managed to do it and get a studio, which was the best thing that ever happened to us. And we just started writing in the studio, and also when we had events, we'll perform for the guests and stuff like that, which was just amazing, like literally amazing, the best thing ever. And so I carried that on and writing music. And when I came home, I started pursuing my music. Then a few things happened and I took a break. And yeah, and now I'm at a stage where I'm writing the best music that I've written in so long. And that's because I've had, I'm doing therapy and I'm talking about things and I'm now putting it into songs and stuff. And I've now got an amazing team, and I've done Glastonbury this year, and I've done other festivals, and I've had my own headline shows which I've sold out. Like my first headline show, I sold out, I think it was like 800 tickets. And yeah, it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm having a relaunch, and on the 14th, I'm heading over to Manchester, the BBC, and I'm not going to say too much, but I'm doing this whole massive thing in there and doing it live and stuff, which is great, and I can't wait for it. And yeah, and I'm super proud and I'm grateful for all of it. So I just want to carry on doing music and bring joy to people, and sometimes make you guys cry if it's a sad song,
Yeah,
you know.
very sad songs, and they mostly make you cry because they are very sad.
Yeah, but I
But if
also
they,
got to make song for the ladies to dance, you know. So,
but
uh,
you've also spoken recently in the House of Lords.
oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
I've also spoken in the House of Lords and I perform in the House of Lords. And the mayor personally got one of his assistants to get in contact with me, and I've just done a campaign with the mayor where we've done some things for for children, and to the point where, you know, if I need anything in regards to certain things, I can get in contact with him, which is great. And I've just come back the other day from doing it's like a Ukraine summit, which Boris Johnson was there and all these Africa people, and I had to literally, they wanted me to go there and perform and speak um, about stuff. So I've just done that as well. And yeah, and October is going to be a busy month, and then next year I believe will be one of my biggest years yet in music. So yeah,
You should be
thanks.
really proud.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, we
It's
are, and we'll put some of
fantastic.
the links into your tracks that are already available. We'll put them into the show notes. And I guess you've also got hanging over your head is still not the decision made about your right to stay here, which must be feeling like it's just in the background while that decision's waiting to be made.
Yeah, that is. Oh, where do we start with that one? That makes me want to cry every time.
Mm.
But um, yeah, since I've been out of prison, I've not been allowed housing. I've not been allowed to earn any money that I make from music or anything. So all the money that I make from music, I donate to charity. Um, hmm. so yeah, when I first, to most people that wouldn't understand, like like people that watch this trainees, when you're foreign national, when you come over as a refugee, you get given indefinite leave to remain. Um, and then you have to wait a while, then you apply for your whole British citizenship. So my whole family applied, but because I was in prison, they took my indefinite leave to remain. And um, so I've been fighting for that for the last, I think, 6.5 years to try get that back in order for me to be able to, one, earn money, to, be able to have a driving license or drive and have somewhere of my own that I can call home and stuff. So I've been really, it's my own fault, I shouldn't have committed what I did and done what I've done, and I wouldn't be in this position. But I've worked so hard on myself, and not for anyone else, for me, and just to get to this point where I am today. And I believe that I've proven time and time again, even coming out and getting a bursary for Cambridge and signing on every week, going to the home office place and signing on when they don't give you no money or nothing. Um, that I've done, I've proven that I'm not a risk. I'm not going to reoffend. I'm not going to do anything. Um, but I've not. Sometimes I don't even know where I'm staying. I don't even know what I'm eating. I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't even know what's happening. But God in the universe, keep me looking decent. So when I walk into rooms, I'm able to hold my own. I'm able to get a shower. I'm able to sofa surf here, sofa surf there, whenever I can. And there's days where I just walk and yeah, just walk and try to get a shower in the morning. It's funny that it reminds me of when I was 11 and stuff. But I'm actually really grateful that I've got a great support network around me of people that no matter what happens, I'll have food, or I might get somewhere to stay for the night, or this or that, or this and that. So if I didn't have that, like most people that go through all this stuff, you know, they just reoffend and go back into prison. Some of them start using drugs. You start seeing them on the streets and doing all of this different stuff. And I'm not going to do that. And I'm never going to let anyone make me go back to that place where I'm learning, I'm earning things illegally just to get myself afloat. So I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing. We have a place where we're waiting for decision. And I believe that I've proven myself to be worthy, actually, someone that has contributed to the UK, where even when the mayor wrote the letter for me to the Home Office, he's saying the reason they contacted me is because of all the work that I do in the community. And that's the reason why they got in contact with me and stuff like that. So, and they see me as a great role model. So I believe I've done enough, and whatever trials and tribulations that I've had to go through till now and stuff like that, it will sort itself out. You know, just like when I got my knock back in Grendon, and I had to go to Brixton, or when I was on the IPP sentence and I had to wait year after year and after year when they're saying you don't know what's happening. I believe it's kind of like the same process that I've had to go through out here. And but it's I think I always say this has been the toughest bit. Forget, like, prison was tough. Therapy was, therapy is, it's really tough. But the work starts out here, and if I didn't learn all the tools that I did in Grendon, sorry, my camera went off. If I didn't learn all the tools that I did in Grendon, or I wouldn't have had, I wouldn't have been able to survive out here. And if I didn't have this massive support network of people around me, I wouldn't have been able to survive it, especially with some of the things that I've actually endured, which I'm not going to say on camera, you know, things that's happened to me whilst I've been outside from no fault of my own. I wouldn't have been able to deal with, I wouldn't have been able to deal with it if I didn't have, you know, therapy now, that I do every now and then. Am I allowed to say Geraldine? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Geraldine still gives me therapy now, and she's been a massive support network to me. And if I didn't have Geraldine doing therapy with me, and I didn't have, other support network of people, that took me in for such a long time and put me up, and I wouldn't, I wouldn't be here. I don't think. I think my head would have literally exploded by now, and who knows what I would have been doing. And actually, I've got to also give myself credit as well, because I've been super, super resilient, and I've had a lot of perseverance going through all of this stuff. And it actually goes to show me how strong I am to be able to go through so much from such a young age. And I'm still here, still going strong, and I've turned my whole life around. And I've got this thing hanging over me, and it's kind of taking me back to when I was 11 years old, and I've had to do this and do that. But it's not the same situation. It's a completely different situation, but sometimes it does take me back to certain places, and and I'll speak about it to Geraldine, and if anything comes up, or things. But yeah, just speaking about it does kind of gets me a little bit choky at times, and it makes me all funny inside. So I want to well up, and I might have a cry later, and that's okay if I have a cry later. But yeah, it's been super, super tough on that side of stuff. But everything else is lovely, On the plus side, I've got my son. It's amazing. He's super proud of me. All of this stuff he's well aware of. And what he's most proud of is my resilience and all of this stuff. And actually, he's learned a lot from it, and me being able to speak to other grown men about it, and actually coming back into prison and speaking to people about it and telling them that, actually, boys, you think you're going to do therapy and you're going to come home and all these things are going to be amazing for you when you come home, and things are just going to happen over the sudden. But no, the work actually starts out here. And yeah, so yeah. Oh, sorry, guys, but that's me on that subject.
Yeah, no, well done. And we really
I'm just really
appreciate you
sorry to
taking the
hear that.
time. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough to hear.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear how difficult it is. It is, Rosca, but I think, I think there was always I think I've said this to you before, but you're always someone who struck me as just a very resilient person.
Yeah.
And not to dismiss the difficulties that you are facing, but when I say that, but also I think there's a really important message there, is that yes, we can, people can do all the work in prison, but it's actually about how they apply it in practice. And so I think that that's a really powerful message actually for people listening, and whether that be other people in a similar position as you, or whether it's people who want to come into the profession, to actually really understand how difficult it is for people to navigate the community having been in prison for various reasons. That's really helpful.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you. I'd just like to thank you both for what you do, and to anyone that's listening to this, or your trainees, that are thinking of getting into this line of work. I think you're very much needed, and I think it's very important, and it's such a powerful job that you all do, and it's and a lot of people need it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
So that just remains for us to say,
Let's talk. Let's accept it.